Author, coach, and associate broker Dan Rochon wrote a book based on building consistent and predictable income for real estate agents. He's with me tonight to share a story on how he built a real estate business from scratch and how he coaches agents to do the exact same thing. Dan Rochon, so happy to have you here tonight.
Hey, Todd. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm happy to be here as well.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun tonight. I'm Todd Sachs. I'm the broker and founder of Sachs Realty. We are a real estate brokerage here in Maryland. We help buyers and sellers of both residential and commercial real estate transactions. And we also have an amazing broker network all over the country. Great people like Dan that we can refer you to. So if you're anywhere else you're listening to this podcast and you're anywhere in the United States and you don't have an agent, you're not represented right now, hit me up. I will be glad to introduce you to a rock star in your neighborhood, your community. And but anyway, tonight we're gonna talk about what it's like to be in the real estate business. I mean, we have like any industry right now, we have a lot of challenges that we're dealing with. I mean, real estate's kind of like all over the news. We have things like the end of the moratorium, the foreclosure and eviction moratorium. It's coming up here in a matter of days. And, it's trending. Real estate's trending. We have probably as many licensees as we have, if not more right now.
There's more. There's more.
Yeah, more than there are available inventory to buy. And so we're going to talk about what it's like to be an agent, whether you're in some type of business or graduating school and thinking, hey, a real estate career may be for me, or whether you've been in the real estate industry for a long time and you just need a little shot, to get you going. Maybe you've been beat up by putting in 70 offers in the last 2 weeks and none of them have been accepted because the competition for the limited houses that are out there. I mean, maybe you just need a nice refresher, a breath of fresh air. Dan's going to give it to us. The business of real estate is wonderful. It is one of the best industries to be in. I've been serving the industry from one way or another for 32 years. I started swinging a hammer as a contractor, started my brokerage about 4 years ago. Dan's been in it for quite some time. But anyway, it's a low barrier to entry, guys, and leadership is important. Dan's a big leader. So Dan, welcome to our show, and just kind of give everybody an overview of who you are.
Sure. Thanks again, Todd. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Dan Rochon, and I have been in real estate sales since 2007. And I got into real estate sales because before I got into real estate, I was waiting tables at a very high-end steakhouse in Washington, D.C. And I knew that I was destined to be a business owner. See, I've always looked at this as a business, not necessarily as a real estate salesperson. I've looked at myself as a business owner in a real estate sales business. And when I was waiting tables back in, before 2007, I knew that I wanted to be a business owner. I knew I wanted to help people to achieve their goals, to solve their problems. I just didn't know how. I was confined to this world of waiting tables. And I looked at a lot of different opportunities. I looked at, Five Guys and Quiznos, and believe it or not, I had to come up with like $250,000 to $500,000 to get into those businesses. And as a waiter, I make good money, yet I didn't have $500,000. And so I found the business of real estate sales. I realized I can about $2,000. I can 60-hour course. I can get my license. You mentioned already, Todd, a low barrier to entry. And so I got licensed in November of 2007. The next 6 months, I had a big fat 0 closings. And so I remember going to my broker, Karen. I remember knocking on her door. I'm like, Karen, we need to talk here. And Karen's like, come on in. And so I came on in. I was licensed for about 4 months, and Karen, shared, I said, Karen, I don't know if this is for me. And she's like, just keep doing what you're doing. That was her pep talk. I was like, oh, what do you mean keep doing what I'm doing? I'm about to pay my mortgage on my credit card here, Karen. And so she says, well, come on in, let's talk. And that day she and I came up with a plan that she coached me on and I implemented. And in April 2008, this was 6 months after I got my license, I had my first closing. And through having that consistent business after a really rough start, 18 months after getting my license, I was able to buy the brokerage that I worked for. So I had a lot of success between month 6 and 18. And so then I owned that brokerage for the next 10 years. I sold it at the end of 2018. And that's when I, doubled down back onto my real estate sales business, my personal business. And I wrote the book, Real Estate Evolution, which I had documented the steps. And there it is in Todd's hand. I documented the steps that I took along the way.
Dan, I want to ask you, I mean, you owned a real estate brokerage. You know, some people say that if you want to be broker or open a brokerage, and, you're kind of supporting that. I started, I first said, hey, I won't do production. I'll just open up a brokerage and rely on everyone else's production, and quickly realized I needed to do production. So you actually sold the business and went back into production. So, yes, and yes, and I've read your book, and it's great. And by the way, we're going to publish all of Dan's information in the show notes. We're going to dive into his book. He has 10 steps of how you can build your consistent and predictable income. And in the real estate business, that's a really important tagline to pay attention to, because a lot of what we do, is seasonal. Now, forget about the fact that right now, springtime is typically your largest sales months. For the last year and a half, every month has been your largest sales month. But we're going to stay away from the phenomenon, this sort of outlier couple of years that we're having. And tonight we're going to talk about normal markets and what it's like to run a normal business. And the key, as Dan has really hit out of the park here, is how to build that consistent and predictable income that you need in a business of seasonality. People start going back to school and they start thinking about, not moving, especially if they have kids, but actually getting back to school prepared. And so, traditionally, historically in our business, that's sort of like a slower time. Holidays, winter, people are decorating for the holidays. They're not trying to parade people in their house to sell it with, their decorations up. But we're going to talk about, some of the highlights of his book. Dan, why did you write the book? I mean, why, it's you and I have spoken off camera and talked about, I'm working on a book. I've been working on it for 2 years now. And, I know the commitment that it takes to actually finish the book.
Yeah.
But why? What's your why on the book?
Yeah. So this business has been very kind to me. And I've been able to design a life that the business supports my life. It's not the other way around. And, so this is a big exception right now, Todd, that I am actually working past my bedtime right now, right this second in this conversation.
Legitimately past your bedtime.
Yeah, my bedtime's in about 21 minutes.
Okay.
So that, I'm going to just, I'll check out of here early. Maybe. I don't know. No, I'll stay till the end. I promise you that.
We're not letting you do that.
I got you, man. I got you. Now I get up at like 3:30 in the morning. But we can get into that later. So anyways, so I wrote the book because after selling the brokerage that I used to own, I went to one of my mentors and I knew that, I'm 48 years old. So I was 46 at the time, I look at myself as a very young man, and I guess that's all perspective. Yet, I'm far from ready to retire. And I went to one of my mentors along that time when I was selling the brokerage. And I was like, okay, I know it's time for the next step in my journey. I wasn't quite clear on what that would be. And he had encouraged for me to document the journey along the way. And that's what I did. And in fact, I at first didn't realize I was writing a book. At first, I thought I was writing a series of ebooks. And about 3 months into that adventure, I realized, like, oh my goodness, like I am nowhere even close to the finish line. So at the end of it took me 13 months. I did not take a single day off that entire 13 months. I wrote 3 hours a day. I just mentioned I get up very early. So I would get up around 3:30 in the morning, and from around maybe 4 a.m. to 7 a.m., I would write. And then 7, I'd go to the gym, and then I'd start my workday in my sales business around 8:30. And not around, at 8:30. I'm very precise on that, actually. And so, so I did that for 13 months. And I would say, candidly, the biggest, I think, challenge that I had while I was writing was the fact that I didn't see the finish line. And people would ask me when I was writing, like, well, when's that book going to be done? When's that book going to be done? I'm like, I have no idea. It's done when it's done. Because I knew, I had a rough idea of the framework of and what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with agents how you can have a closing every single month of the year. Because you'd already mentioned it, Todd, about the seasonality. And yes, there is a seasonal cycle in our business. Yet, that doesn't mean that as an individual salesperson or as an individual business owner that you have to choose to ride that cycle. Because as that cycle goes up and down, guess what else happens? Your competition also goes up and down. Because coming into November, October, November, December, it is true there's going to be less business, and many agents hibernate. And so if you're still treating it like a job, doing the activity that's going to generate opportunity in front of you, there's no reason why you have to have a month without as many closings as you desire when you follow a system.
Yeah, I love that. And you even quote in your book, Mark Twain, all generalizations are false, including this one. I like that. I said, and what you're saying is, consistent with that, because, if you want to accept that generalization as the way business is going to be, hey, look, I'm not going to make any income for 3 months out of the year, or heck, if you just want to keep going, just say 4 or 5 months out of the year, you may not do business. It might be snowing or raining or whatever, or back to school. But what you're saying is, your system is really just about focusing on not the generalization of what you're hearing in the industry, but how you can turn this business on and be consistent and plan and things like that. You start out, and I want to just say too, because I think by now I'm a fan of your book.
Thank you.
Right. So, what I like about your book is, even though it's written with real estate context as the foundation, the real foundation is wrapped around these steps that you can implement in your life. You can substitute the actual chores or tasks of doing real estate. You can actually substitute that with your own, context. And I want to dive in a little bit, but you start us out on the journey, Dan, of taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And so I like to talk about that a little bit, what you mean by that. I know what you mean because
Sure.
I read your book, but you start out and you talk about, and everybody has this. We all have our demons. We all have what we want to make an excuse about, or say, there's a reason why I can't make it. There's a reason why I can't succeed. There's a reason why I can't get up in the morning. There's a reason why I can't make calls. There's a reason why this isn't working. And, one of the first things you talk about early on in the book is owning it, owning that responsibility and stopping the excuses. And, would you want to share a little bit about, because we all have demons and we all have these things that prevent us in our mind from being successful. And we know that we can be as successful as anybody else. There's nothing that's preventing us, only us that's preventing us. So can you share with us your story?
Well, talking about responsibility. So what you just mentioned, Todd, is a level of responsibility. In the book, I take it even a level further, which I call ultimate responsibility. And so what I mean by ultimate responsibility is not only can you choose to take responsibility for your actions, you could also choose to look at your entire life within yourself, within your environment, and understand that everything you have some sort of DNA as a part of. Now, does that mean that it's your fault if you go out and you're driving a car and somebody, little fender bender, we'll make a really, really little fender bender, right? Because I don't want to create that in anybody's reality. But somebody, just gently bumps your car. Does that mean that it's your fault? No. Yet, when you look at life as though if I would have left a little bit earlier or a little bit later, maybe I wouldn't have gotten a little fender bender. Okay, and so what naturally comes to people when I share that is, well, geez, how can I control any of that? I'm not suggesting that you can control everything. What I'm suggesting is that when you look at what occurs in your life, as though if you have some sort of input into it, then the power that you can get in return is immense. The ability for you to be able to then take those things that may stop you and place them to the side. And the more that you can take that ultimate responsibility, then the less that those things that may be getting in your way right now for you to obtain your potential, those things tend to start to go away. And so that's what I mean by responsibility, and specifically taking ultimate responsibility for your life.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely, just you saying that, I can think I'm, thinking about, as it relates to, just about everything. And in real estate, I always say you have to be responsible sometimes even for the other side of the transaction. So we get a lot of times we don't get our head right because we say, well, that's not our job or that's not our responsibility. And, at the end of the day, sometimes you have to reach across to what isn't necessarily your responsibility, but you can impact the outcome in some way.
It's also understanding that there are things, you talked about the seasonality. All right. You talk about the seasonal cycle, which is very real. I compare that to a thunderstorm. If I looked out my window right now and it's pouring rain, there's nothing I could do about that. What I can do is choose to bring an umbrella with me or not. So there's circumstance. Those are the things that occur, and you have, it is what it is.
Right.
A pandemic. Okay, Todd, you're not responsible for the pandemic, and neither am I, and neither are you, the listener or the viewer. Yet, what will you do in the face of that?
How we handle it.
It's the choices that you are able to make an impact. And that's all that you could do. You could only look at what are the actions that I can take, and you go back into like that transaction. I had a lady called me yesterday on one of my listings, and she's like, "Hey, I can't find any comparable properties for this. Can you share me with the comparable properties?" Well, first of all, I'm thinking yes, right, because that's in my seller's best interest,
right.
And then secondly, I'm human, right? I did have that second of a thought, like, oh my goodness, like,
how about seriously? You do your job? Right?
Right? I did have that second of a thought, right, and then my next thought, because sometimes you can't control that first thought, but my second thought was gratitude, because I was grateful to be able to, hey, absolutely, let me share those comps with you, right? Because those comps are going to be real. I'll be legit, yet they're going to be they're gonna put a good face on the property that I'm selling, because that's my fiduciary care, by the way. Now, her fiduciary care is to take care of her buyer. Now, if she chooses not to do that, then that's unfortunate for her client.
Yeah. And, as we get into talking about real estate more, communication, I mean, what you just sort of identified is just good communication skills. We could choose to, tell her to do her own job, but you communicated with the appropriate message, and the outcome is much more favorable that way.
Sure.
And, in your book, you talk about communication. You're thinking about getting into this business. This is a business where communication is really important. We like to change the way we communicate now with text messaging and messaging on social media. And you even refer to the steps of, the hierarchy of communicating. And, for you, even some of you millennials that are listening, this is a business. If you're thinking about being in real estate, understanding that even when you're serving millennials, there's a certain time where they go as far as they can without talking to a real person. I mean, the internet's great for that. You get on Zillow or Trulia or whatever it is, and you're looking for the properties. And then all of a sudden, you don't want to talk to people necessarily, but at the end of the day, now you have to, because you want to see the house. And houses aren't selling houses to other houses, themselves to other houses. So people are still selling houses. So at the end of the day, you need to communicate. So when you're thinking about being a good, getting into the business, you have to realize that, hey, you need to communicate. You have to have good communication skills. And that's sort of, part of your step one to flourish is to be able to communicate properly. And you talk about a lot, Dan, where I think that you say communication is composed of, and I have some notes here, 7% words that you use, 38% tonality, 55% physiology. And you talk about listen, listen, listen. So, can you kind of explain why communication in this business is so important, and especially these percentages that you talk about?
My belief is that, I treat the business as life. Okay. So when I talk about communication, yes, it's important in real estate sales business. Yet for me, I study communication because I believe that when you're able to be a better communicator, you'll have a more fulfilling life. So you have to start with what is communication. And the definition of communication that I present in Real Estate Evolution is that communication is the response that you get. Now, you have to refer back to what I shared with you about ultimate responsibility to really deeply understand what I'm sharing with you. Because if you communicate something to somebody, A, and they communicate back to you, Z, you could absolutely say, well, geez, they weren't listening. Or you could recognize that that you have an opportunity to be a better communicator. So that's what communication is. So now I'll give you a model of communication, which is 3 steps. So if you're listening to this, I suggest that maybe get out a pen and paper and write these 3 steps down. So the 3 steps to effective communication is, number 1 is to be in rapport. Number 2 is to ask adept questions. And number 3 is to actively listen. So what is rapport? Rapport is a connectivity. So if you can imagine 2 people dancing across a dance floor, perhaps they never met before, and one dance partner is putting their right shoulder in while the other is taking their left shoulder and bringing it out, and they're in unison. And these are 2 people they've never met before, yet they're connected energetically. That is a representation of rapport. So now how do you know when you're in rapport? You know when you're in rapport is when you experience a physical feeling. So that's how you know if you're in rapport or not in rapport. So step number one to effective communication is to intend to be in rapport. Now it's about asking adept questions. And so to ask adept questions would be to intend to go deep. And what I mean by that, let's say you have a buyer and it's a single gentleman. And he comes to you, he says, hey, Todd, I want to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom townhome. And you say, okay, great. Let's go out and look at one. Well, you're at a shallow level of understanding at that point. Yet if you inquire to say, okay, great, 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome. So tell me more about that. What's important to you about that? And then he says whatever it may be. And then you repeat back what you hear from him. And then you say, well, okay, I understand that. So what does that mean to you? And you continue along that line of questioning. And the deeper level of rapport that you're in, and the deeper that you'll be able to understand, and you probably won't actually get to this level on your first communication yet. Perhaps through the transaction, you get to this level of understanding that you find out that man that you're serving just got divorced. And he has a 12-year-old daughter. And it's important to him to be a good father. And maybe his father abandoned him when he was 12 years old. And he doesn't want to be that guy, which is why he wants that 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome in a close proximity to his daughter. So now, because you're asking adept questions, you're going to be so much better suited to be able to help him that if you don't choose to ask those deep questions and it's 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhome.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple things, happen, people, when you can penetrate and go deeper, and you can do so by truly caring, and that's what a lot of this comes down to, is wanting to serve them the best.
Absolutely.
You have to understand. I mean, what we do is so critical. We become such an important part of their life because we know these intimacies. And the quicker you can establish these intimacies, the better your close rate's going to be. Because when people share these intimacies with you, they're not quick to just go off and find somebody else.
No.
They don't want to go through it again. So the more that you can get out early on, even, the better position you have with seeing the transaction through and actually having that, lifelong relationship and getting referrals and everything else that goes.
Oh, it all ties together. Yeah,
it all ties together. Yeah.
And so then after you ask those adept questions, then the third step of the communication model that I teach is to actively listen. Now, for you to actively listen, there's another thing that you have to do to be able to do that. Because if you're the prospect, or if you're my client, and I'm worried about what I'm going to say because I don't know what I'm going to say, I am not equipped to actively listen, because what I'm listening to is those little things in my head that are going through of like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Or what's he thinking, or this or that, or whatever's going on the inside. So that goes into understanding. And I know that this is probably, I know that this in the business, this turns a lot of agents off. I get it. Yet when you practice your scripts, when you practice your dialogue, and you understand how to approach any given situation, because there's only a few, and you understand how to handle objection, but I'll give some asterisks here, because I really believe that if I'm handling objection, then that means I made a mistake by not proactively addressing it before it became an objection. However, let's just stick with that and say, if I know how to handle the objection, and I'm not worried about what objection is going to be thrown at me, you can say anything at me. I will just respond back in a second after I demonstrate to you that I am listening to you, of course. Then you're equipped to actively listen. Okay, so it's understanding as an agent. A lot of sales trainers and coaches, it's probably because they don't understand how all these components are tied together, right? So Todd, you expertly said, Well, when you get to that intimate level of understanding and relationship, and that's great because now you're going to be able to take care of that client. And just like what you said, now you're going to be able to sustain your business. It's going to having those deep relationships with people that know, like, and trust you, that you really, truly take the time to care for. Excuse me. Those relationships will put a moat around your business to protect you against the threats that are already here. The big data, technology, commoditization, artificial intelligence. And so when you can see there's just a simple communication model that I'm teaching right now, yet there's so much more that communication model impacts in your business when you choose to be able to study and implement that model.
Yeah, and I think that we agree that those technologies that you're referring to, I mean, we're not going away. I mean, professional real estate professionals are not going away. We're here to stay. I mean, unfortunately, everyone doesn't always have a great experience, and that's a complete different topic in its own. But it is important that you build those bonds. We're probably one of the only industries. A lot of times in business, we're taught, don't get personal with your client, or build that level, stay separate, keep your business and your personal life separate. This is probably one of the only businesses where, I feel that is the most important aspect, because we are such an integral part. I mean, we're so involved, and we see people. If you're in the real estate business and you're doing this full time, you're going to experience people breaking up. You're going to experience divorce. You're going to experience death and, family members, and emotional charged transactions where, maybe mom or dad passed away. They were the last living parent, and now the kids have to sell the house, and they're all emotional. And, so who are they going to come to in something like that? They're going to come to somebody that they know, that they can trust, that they know understands them, knows their, what they need the most, and understands what they need the most. And that, what you're describing, this communication, building that rapport is so critical to our industry. In a world, Dan, of technology, you have a hierarchy of communication in your book, and number one is face-to-face.
Yep.
And we all learned through COVID that, we had to adapt to what you say is the number two highest on the priority. And that's what we're doing right now, right?
Yep.
Video chatting, where we can build a rapport, and we can, see expression and tonality and the physiology aspect of communication. At what point does, when we're dealing with this new, and I'll say it prefaced by saying, we had a meeting, sort of like a state of the industry meeting, and we kind of discussed about, the different technologies that are out there and how people communicate. And, a lot of, old timers, I guess I'm an old timer. I'm older than you, Dan, but a lot of old timers will say stuff like, well, I only pick up the phone. I'm not texting. I'm not doing this social media communication. I don't say that because a lot of times, your buyer or your seller, that's sort of like the surface level. Maybe you got to get to the next. They want to, like my kids might say, hey, like, who's this weirdo calling me? I don't even know who it is. They don't want to start out that way. Yeah. But how do you recommend that people kind of graduate from the social media messaging or the texting to those hierarchies of communication?
Well, so the lower level of communication is going to be text, and it's a very efficient methodology. So what you have to understand, and so let me first demonstrate that to you. So if you're listening to us right now, I hope that you're getting some sort of value out of participating in this conversation. And what do you think right now? I'm not talking to you, Todd. I'm talking to you, the listener and the viewer. What do you think right now your experience would be if you observing Todd and I texting back and forth to each other right now? Do you think it would be as impactful as your ability to watch this or listen to this? Do you think that you would get the same outcome? So now that you understand the impact of being able to, and right now, this is a one-way, this is a unilateral conversation. I'm not even able to listen to you or see you. So this is still a very, very limited type of communication. So now that you understand sort of, what I mean by, and what Todd, what you were, restating about, as you get face-to-face, as you be able to see the physiology, understand the tonality, the inflection, the emotion. When do you communicate with text? When do you communicate at a higher level, et cetera? Well, first of all, if you have anything that's going to be impactful, 100% of the time, at the very least, that should be a phone conversation. When you can escalate that to a video or a face-to-face, do so. What do I mean by something that would be impactful? That would be something that would be a price adjustment conversation, presenting an offer, bad news. It should be something that on a frequent basis, you should be communicating with your sellers, for example, and giving them an update. At least once a week, you should be on the phone with them, in my strong opinion. When do you use text? You can use text to be able to communicate, quick things, things that are not as impactful. You can use I use text for prospecting. In fact, I was at a for sale by owner appointment about 2.5 hours ago, and I long ago stopped prospecting for sale by owners by phone. We prospect them on text now, and it's so much more impactful. It's so much more effective, right? So it's adapting the communication. But guess what? Ain't nobody gonna hire me by texting, because what my intention is through that text was to set the appointment. And that appointment, guess what? That was face-to-face. So you have to understand the different levels of communication and when to use which. You want to get hired, you want to be face-to-face when you can. Absent of that, a video conversation. And the last thing I'll say, because for the last 1.5 years or so through the pandemic, I was feeling pretty good about a lot of video conversations. And I got a little bit numb to the importance of a face-to-face interaction, because the first time that I was around a large group of people in a face-to-face interaction was about maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago. Actually, it was May 7th, so however long ago that was. And so it was at an event, and there was about 50 of my colleagues there. And I'm going to tell you that I had so much energy from being face-to-face with my colleagues that I really understood that I got a little bit numb. The video conversations sort of got me a little bit numb to relationship. And it wasn't until, and I didn't even notice it until I got into that environment where I was able to, pat people on the back and hug them and shake their hand and see them. And man, I was on a high for like 2 weeks after that, just from being in front of people. So yeah, certainly you, the listener, probably have had a similar type of experience. I encourage for you to contemplate that as you say, how do I use that for my business?
Absolutely. And if you guys are listening and you want to chat in a question or a comment, feel free to do so. And also, that's during the live show. We'll address you right now. And if you're listening or watching post live, then go ahead and comment, and we'll be sure to get back to you. And, we like your comments. We appreciate that. One thing you have to realize, and what Dan's talking about with communication is, we make a lot of decisions in life. And some are high consideration decisions and some are low consideration decisions. And, real estate is a very high consideration decision. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that goes into, why they hire who they hire. And so it's not just like, where they're going to go out to a restaurant and eat. That's a low consideration, because if they have a bad experience, there's very low impact in their life. And, chances are they may even go back to the same restaurant they had a bad experience with. But with real estate, people buy houses only a couple times in their life. Maybe every 7 to 10 years, they'll buy or sell real estate. If they're lucky, it's a big thing. So, the way that we communicate, being able to show our true sincerity and the ability to serve them and ability to listen, as Dan is saying, is very important. The next thing I want to move on to is really when you start out in the real estate business, or just, whatever, you start out in business, you decide, hey, I'm going to try this self-employment thing and give it a shot. What people don't tell you a lot is you have to create business. You have to create leads. So let's discuss that a little bit, Dan, because everybody says, like, why do they get on teams? They start out, they want to get on a team because they hope that they get leads or get business. Or a lot of brokers will try and sell that hook that, hey, if you come to this brokerage or whatever, we provide you with leads. And a lot of agents sort of, may buy into that, but they quickly realize that no one is going to provide them with the amount of leads that they need to have a very successful business. You have to be good at lead generation. And part of that is first the communication and now leads. So, Dan, when you started out, you got your license. Did anybody have that conversation with you early on? Did they say, hey, Dan, by the way, generate leads all day? You're a professional lead generator.
Yeah. I don't know when the first time I had that understanding was. I do know that for about 15 years on my cork board above my desk where I do lead generate, that I've got a sign up there that says that I am not in real estate sales. I am in the lead generation business specializing in real estate sales. And so I have a clarity that whether if you're a doctor, a chiropractor, a lawyer, a plumber, if you don't understand that your job is largely to be able to generate business, then your second best option is to be a part of an organization that's going to be able to do that for you. My opinion about what you mentioned about teams is that you are completely correct, Todd, that a lot of agents will be attracted to a team because that team will provide them with leads. In my opinion, that a team should be able to provide an agent with the opportunity for you as that agent to achieve the goals that are important to you. Now, a part of that should be and could be helping you with finding business. And a part of that, in my strong opinion, should be and could be helping you to be able to think in the manner so that you can achieve the goals that you intend to achieve. I look at my role in my sales business as I'm there to help the people that I serve for them to be able to get whatever the heck they want to get. And that's what
more leadership.
That's my role as a leader.
Right.
And so if you're considering to join a team, I would never even consider a team if that team leader, whoever I'm talking to, does not ask me the question, what are your goals? Or something along those lines. Because if they don't care enough to actually understand or even ask the question, then are they really in it for, to help you or not? And yes, the lead generation is a piece of that from that team aspect. But going back to lead generation being the fundamental of your business, it's one of the 5 things that I call CPI time. And what CPI time is, it's the time that puts money into your pocket. And the 5 activities of CPI time is to lead generate, to convert those leads to an appointment, to attend the appointment for the purpose to get hired, to negotiate, and to practice your scripted role play. Now, surrounding all of that is to exceed your client's expectations. And so when you can focus on those 5 activities being your money-making activities, and then you sort of encompass it with the intention to exceed the client's expectations, then you can have a very thriving business. And then it goes back, it's all tied together. It goes back to, how do you exceed expectations? Well, you do so by over communicating. Because even if there's something that goes wrong with that transaction, if you are communicating with them, I mean, the rule on my team is 5 days a week, they get some sort of communication from us. And 3 of those 5 days, it's a voice phone call or face-to-face or a video. Okay. Because we know that when we communicate 5 days a week, guess what that does? It does 2 things. Number one, it sets you up for success, even if there's something that goes wrong, because they're going to trust you and know that you are there to serve them. Number 2, guess what? It lets you take the weekend off. All right. Or the 2 days off that you designate as your weekend. And so by following that methodology of communication, you're able to provide a superior level of service and take time off. And I want to tell you real quick, Todd, how I learned about that communication was when my daughter was about 2 years old. She went to a Montessori school, and it was in Arlington, Virginia. And so my wife and I were living in this little townhome at the time. Well, we found our dream home, which was I tell you the story about that in the book Real Estate Evolution. So I won't go into that right now. But we find our dream home, and we have to move Maggie, my daughter, to a new school. So we bring her to the new school, and now she's in that new school, and she's in there for a few months. And I look at my wife one day, I'm like, this school sucks. And she's like, what do you mean the school's? I'm like, look, let's go and visit them. So we pop in and we visit them, and we shadow them for a couple hours on a Friday. And I realized by shadowing them, I said, wait, it's just as good as the old school. And so I go home and I'm thinking about it over the weekend. I'm like, why did I think the school wasn't any good? And then I realized the difference between the same 2 schools. They were the same level of skill set, the same level of education. The difference was the first school, man, the owner of that school, they called her the headmistress. Now, I don't think that was probably a great name to name the owner, but hey, that's a whole nother story. But that's what she called herself, all right? And so she would almost be annoying how much she would communicate. I'd get a text every other day. I'd get an email almost every day. I'd get a phone call. I'd get a video. She'd record a quick video and send it to me. It was It was so excessive that the parents would sort of tease her when we'd go to the events at the park. But guess what? Because she over communicated with me, and that same level of service between her school and the other school, I thought the other school was far inferior to her school. And so I learned a very valuable business lesson through that experience with my daughter, which was, it doesn't matter how great of a job I take care of my clients if I'm not over communicating with them. And so that's the secret ingredient to the sauce of exceeding your client's expectations.
Yeah, and business absence does not make the heart grow fonder.
No, sir.
That is not, that is, but I can see, and we're all guilty of it, at some level. I can see where, we get busy and, we're still working. We got it all going on. We're taking it, taking control. We're crushing it. We're making it happen. But our client doesn't see it because, like you said, we stopped letting them know. So with lead generation, Dan, if you were to give it, you get your license or maybe you've had your license now for quite some time. Maybe you've even been in the business for 30 years. And, you kind of went through the pandemic last year and a half. You've been sitting on the couch, not literally, but, you need, sort of to hear what we don't always want to hear. And look, well, I'm going to ask the question first. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most important, what do you give lead generating?
172.
The most important thing in business. I mean, and
Well, let's get the 1 to 10, 172. Yes.
Right. So we'll just, we'll knock the ceiling out of the 10. And look, I'm not crazy about it either, right? So if you're listening, you're like, man, I hate cold calling, or I hate knocking on doors, or I hate asking for referrals because, you don't know how to do it right. And a lot of times that's what it is. A lot of times what we have to understand as businesses, everything's math. Everything's math. So if you do it, you hear it and you're like, yeah, but I don't believe it. I sold encyclopedias when I was a kid, man. And a lot of you listening might be like, what the heck's an encyclopedia? Did you mean Wikipedia? Right? Did you mean Wikipedia? And how do you sell that? Right. But, and I can remember, it was a company called Global Industries. My mom and I were driving downtown Baltimore, and I went past the old office, which I remember well, but they were really on you as far as, when you go out, and they would drop you out in the middle of a neighborhood. Literally, they would put us in the car, drive us to Texas, like 5 or 6 of us in a car sitting on top of each other. And we'd sleep on the floor in a hotel room, literally, all of us packed in. They would drop us out in the morning with, and I didn't know any better. I was 17 years old, and they drop us out, 18 years old, drop us out in the neighborhood in the morning with a little piece of paper, handwritten, that had an address on it. And that's where you got picked up at 9:00 at night. And, don't ask where it is because it wasn't important. It's like 9:00 in the morning. So you don't need to know that yet. Just go and knock on doors. Honest to God. So one of the things that they taught me was don't skip a door, because if you skip the door, and I would come up with 1,000 reasons. Oh, it's a green door. I can't knock on a green door. Oh, they have a sign in the yard. I'm not going to knock on. They're cutting the grass. I'm not going to knock on the door. But anyway, my point is that I was uncomfortable doing it. I made over $1,000 a week selling encyclopedias way back then because I only had to place one a week. And I knew that if I stayed true to it, knocked on the doors, I was going to hit a door that just was okay with buying that way, but it's not comfortable doing it. Dan just said it's 162 of a 1 to 10 lead generating. So Dan, give us some nuggets. I mean, obviously, and guys, we want you to reach out. You're in business. You want to crank it up. You want to turn it up a notch. We want you to read Dan's book, not because I make a penny of it. I don't. It's not the point. The point is he's a great author and a great book and a great coach. And, if you want to know more about his book, tonight we can't go over the whole book. But it is really good. But give us some tips, give us some nuggets on some of the most important things that we can be doing or thinking about. Maybe you want to be a real estate agent. You got to know. Let Dan be the first one to tell you that lead generation, you're a professional lead generator. If you've been in business for a while and you're not doing the sales numbers that you want, you need to get back out there, start hitting business again. Dan, give us some pointers on top lead generating techniques.
All right. So first of all, you want to find one short-term lead generation strategy and one long-term lead generation strategy. And that's it. You could maybe do 2 short-term lead generation strategies. Okay. So once you recognize that you only need 2 pillars to start, now you're going to build upon that as you evolve and as you grow. I mean, today I have about 9. Okay. I think it's 9. And however, I've got a very mature business. So if you don't have a very mature business, let's look at one short and one long. Now for that short, or for each of these actually, what I want you to consider is, what do you love to do? And you don't have to go knock on doors if you don't love to do it. You don't have to cold call if you don't love to do it. You don't have to network or prospect for sale by owners or open houses or anything that you don't love to do. But guess what? You got to do something. So understanding that first, now what can I do? So for the long term, I'll hit that real quick. So the long term, I'm going to recommend for you to look at your sphere of influence. And looking at your sphere of influence, you want to be able to systematically communicate with them. And it's going to take you 18 months before you can really, truly have that pay dividends. 18 months of systematically communicating with them. And what you could do now, here's where the internet, where the technology really could help you. I got a lender buddy of mine. He does a poker night online once a month. Well, guess who he is inviting to that poker night? Real estate agents. It's brilliant. Okay. Very social, very easy. $0 that he invests into that. And it's brilliant. You could do something like that as well. One of my students, he did a whiskey tasting night about 5 months ago. And it was online. He hired a guy to go do a bartenders and show the audience, here's how you make a whiskey sour or whatever the heck they're making. And he does that once a quarter. So that's the long-term lead generation strategy. It could be a barbecue, it could be whatever, but you want to figure out how you can do something that's economical, that's easy to sustain, that you do once a quarter. And that's what you're going to do with your sphere of influence. That's the long-term lead generation strategy. Is going to build that moat that I talked about earlier around your business to protect you through time. Now, what do you do for a short-term lead generation strategy? There's about 15 different things that you could do. I'll mention 3 of them real quick. And I don't know how much time we have here because I don't have my glasses on.
We're good.
So.
We're good.
All right. Thanks.
Got another 2 hours.
I can't see the time at all, but without my glasses. But all right. So the 3 lead generation strategies for the short term that I recommend that you consider would be for sale by owner. I know I just made half of you puke, so stick with me. I'll make that easy, by the way. Facebook leads. Not Facebook, not the social where you're going to work through like groups and stuff. That's another strategy. I'm talking about listing advertisements on Facebook, paid advertising, and open houses. So here's 3 strategies that you could employ for the short term that you could have a paycheck in your pocket if you are at 0 right now, 45 days from now. And here's how you can implement those. So let's look at the for sale by owner strategy first. That's one of the ones that I employ. I already mentioned to you, we do this on a text. So here's what I would encourage for you to do. Find the for sale by owners. You can get them off of Craigslist. You can get them off of Military by Owner, Zillow. You can visit my website. I've got a whole list there of places you can get paid. It's www.thecpicommunity.com. You can visit that website and you can see where you can get the paid resources. So what you're going to do with the for sale by owners is you're going to send them a text. Hey, Todd, it's Dan Rochon, ABC Realty. I see that your property on 123 Main Street's for sale. Are you still selling it? Seller's going to say yes. When they say yes, say, okay, great. Would you consider to pay a X% finder's fee? And I'll just stay with X because we don't want to talk about commissions, whatever you want to throw out there. They're either going to say yes or no or counteroffer you. I don't care what they say to you. Then you say, okay, great. Would it be possible if I could come and take a look at the property? All right, so that's all done text. So right now, if you're listening, you should have 0 call reluctance because I haven't asked you to call. All right, so there's nothing scary so far. So now what your intention to do is to go to that house, to that listing, and guess what I'm going to ask you to not do? You're going to be surprised by this. Do not prospect the listing. So you're probably thinking like, well, what would cause you for me to not prospect the listing? Here's what I want you to do. Instead of prospecting the listing, cultivate and create the relationship. So you start with the relationship because no for sale by owner, nobody's going to hire you without that. Okay. So that's what you have to start with first. So now we've got the relationship. Now that we have the relationship, now you're going to contribute to them. You're going to add value to them. You're going to help them to sell their house on their own. If you can share with them, hey, here's the documents that you may consider. Here's how to hold an open house. Here's how to advertise your property on Facebook. You can show them actually how to do that. 1 out of 5, when you follow up with them, will hire you. So if you want to list 50 homes in the next year, all you have to do is today visit 1 face-to-face for sale by owner and do that 5 days a week. And now that is your job description. And now that's it. That is your job description. Besides servicing and taking great care of your clients, that is what you do. And do nothing else, for your lead generation, except for do the client appreciation that I already mentioned. So that's option 1 for sale by owners. Option 2 would be open houses. But whatever one of these strategies that you choose, do it on steroids. Okay, so if you can envision this, say if you committed to doing 2 to 4 open houses a weekend, and how do you do that? Well, you can do 1 12 to 2 on Saturday, 1 3 to 5 on Saturday, repeat and rinse on Sunday. Let's just say you only committed to 2 a weekend. So if you had 3 valid buyers that came through each of those open houses, that's 24 valid buyers. So you have 24 to 48, depending on how many you choose. Valid opportunities of buyers not working with another agent, that even if you are the worst salesperson in the world, you can be able, you can't tell me if you have 24 shots that you're not going to be able to get to find one that you can have under contract in a payday within 45 days. All right. So again, but you have to, that is your full-time job. Now you're probably thinking right now, but I have no listings. Great. Go to your broker. I promise you that she or he will introduce you to a top listing agent in your company that would love for you to hold an open house on their behalf. Okay, so that objection right there is a small little road bump, whether you have listings or not. Go talk to your broker. The last of the 3 strategies for the short term that I would recommend is the Facebook advertising. And what you simply do, again, go to your broker and ask. I had my broker ask me literally 3 days ago, hey, can we advertise your properties? I can't believe they never asked me that before. I'm like, what? Yes, please, please, please. Get them out there, right? So if you don't have listings, go to your broker. Ask, say, hey, give me some listings I can advertise on Facebook. Advertise those listings on Facebook. And before I dive deeper on that, let me give a little disclaimer. These are the worst leads you will ever get. All right, so now I got that out of the way. All right, so now I just got that out of the way. Now you don't have to ever say that again. But why would I teach you the worst leads? Because it's $2 per prospect. And you could close 1 out of 100 within 45 days. So for a $200 investment, you could get 10 leads today, 10 tomorrow, and 10 over the next 10 days for 100 leads over the next 10 days. And one of those 100, if you treat that like your full-time job, 1 out of those 100 will be an opportunity for you to be in business and, again, close within 45 days. Now, there's about another 12 that we don't have the time to go into. That's 3 options that one of those options, hopefully, is something that you can say, you know what? I dig that. I can do that. Whatever it is, don't get distracted. Take that one and freaking just go down with it. Like, go like 100% intentional with it and treat that like your job, and you will create success. I promise you.
Dan, do you recommend hiring somebody to post the ads? I mean, there are people out there, a lot of agents, they don't know the technology side of things and they get kind of hung up on it. I mean, do you recommend giving that to somebody else?
Yeah, Todd, guess what? One of those agents that has no idea whatsoever on how to post a Facebook ad, you're talking to him right now. Yeah. I have no idea. Okay. Now, I can introduce you to Julene, who's my director of operations, who can tell you exactly how to do that. So, right. Yes, I would recommend, because guess what? It's not in those 5 activities that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can hire a virtual assistant full-time, $600 a month. If you can't afford $600 a month, partner with an agent in your office, or 2 or 3.
Yeah, or just get somebody to do the lead generation for you. But you have to call them back. I mean, I hate to tell you guys, but you actually have to follow up on the leads. And just to backtrack a little bit, and I think your advice is fantastic. I think it's great. I think it takes the fear out of reaching out to these for sale by owners. And I want to go back to the Mark Twain. I mean, guys, you're going to hear a lot of things, and people are going to want to give you a lot of advice, no matter whether you've been in business for 50 years or not. They're going to all tell you what they think you should be doing or what you shouldn't be doing, or they're going to lean on you with their opinions. Guys, Mark Twain, Dan quotes him in his book, all generalizations are false, including this one. I mean, I think that's important takeaway for tonight, that, there's some generalizations that come with these top 3 things that Dan is saying on lead generation. And we can just kind of touch on them real quick before we close up. And one is for sale by owners, that they don't want to hear from you or that doesn't work. And, the facts, even in today's market where it's as hot as it is, it's proven time and time again that people actually make more money at the end of the day when they use a professional to negotiate their deal.
Todd, real quick, I listed 2 in the last week and a half.
There you go. And that's in this hot market.
I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
In today's market.
Yep.
All right. Excuse me for interrupting you.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think it's a great point. So don't, Dan's telling you it works. I know it works. The other thing is open houses. I can't tell you how many agents that I have tenured for long-term agents that say open houses don't work. They say things like, it's just the nosy neighbors that come. Well, that's exactly what you want. The nosy neighbor, because chances are the nosy neighbor is going to come because they want to know if you're really going to get $800,000 for that house, because next year they're thinking about selling themselves. And it's an opportunity for you to actually have a relationship, build rapport, the communication, exactly like Dan is saying, with these neighbors. And a lot of them come through, and there's different laws and representation. And I only know Maryland. Dan's licensed in a couple states, but I know Maryland. Check with your broker, but there are representation laws in different states. But a lot of people are coming through open houses, just they haven't signed anything. They have no commitments to other agents. They may say they have an agent because that's the easiest thing to sort of get rid of the real estate agent. Do you have an agent that you're working with? Oh yeah, we do. Stay away from me. Here's, their name or whatever. But when it comes down to it, most people don't. They can't. I always like to say, well, yeah, who is it? And they can't even tell me their name. Oh, they look at each other and they're like, what? Tom, what? So anyway, they work. Open houses work. I love that. And then Facebook ads, the same thing. You're going to get, Dan's saying, it takes 100 to close one. Guys, if you're starting out in business or you're getting yourself going again, you probably have a lot of time that you can put to going through these people. Get yourself busy. We're here for you. We appreciate you watching tonight. Dan, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, this is great. And guys, again, if you want to reach out, get Dan's book. I'm sure if you reach out, we'll put all of Dan's comments in the show notes. I'm sure he'll even personalize a copy for you. Until next week, guys, if you have not subscribed and you'd like to do so, or just give this video a thumbs up, it's going to help Dan and I, and it's going to help you too, because if you like this content by giving it a thumbs up, it's going to tell the algorithms that you like this type of stuff and you might see more of it. Guys, we always appreciate your comments, so feel free to do that as well. Until next week, have a great night.